Welcome back to Bookish Dives. Glad to have you with us. Now, this isn't our first deep dive. We've tackled a few fascinating books already.
That's right.
And today, we're digging into Scott H. Young's Get Better at Anything.
Yeah, this is a really insightful book. It's all about, how learning actually works, and it offers these sort of core principles, these maxims for getting really good at stuff.
Exactly. And it draws on, well, quite a range, doesn't it? Cognitive psychology, education.
Even history. It pulls lessons from all over.
So for you listening, think of this as your condensed guide. We're boiling down the key insights on learning so you get the essentials without feeling overwhelmed by all the background research.
Bit of a shortcut to the good stuff.
Pretty much. Okay, so the book is kind of structured around three main ideas. Seeing how others do things, actually doing it yourself through practice, and then learning from feedback.
Right. See, do, and feedback. That's the framework.
So let's kick things off with part one. C, learning from others. Chapter 1 starts with this idea that problem solving is basically search.
And Jung uses this incredible story, Andrew Wiles proving Fermat's last theorem, as like the perfect example.
Right. I mean, this guy spent decades navigating this huge, complex, what does the book call it? A problem space.
Yeah, exactly. A landscape of mathematical concepts, searching for that path, that proof.
And the book says there are kind of two main ways problem solving gets tricky. First, you might just lack the specific knowledge an expert has.
Right, stuff you need to learn from others.
Or second, you might be going into totally uncharted territory where nobody really knows the answer yet.
And there's this distinction made between weak methods like general brainstorming and having a big library of strong methods.
Strong methods being that specific deep knowledge for a particular field.
Exactly. Like Wiles' understanding of elliptic curves.
Yeah.
That was a super specific strong method he needed. Useless if your car breaks down, though.
Huh. Good point. It shows how targeted expertise can be. And the chapter also touches on something really key, how you represent the problem in your head.
The 9-dot puzzle example.
Yeah. Where the solution isn't about working harder, it's about, seeing the problem differently. Thinking outside the box you've mentally drawn.
Which is a nice lead-in to Chapter 2. Creativity begins with copying.
Now that sounds a bit counterintuitive, maybe?
It can, yeah. But the book looks at art education. Compares, say, Da Vinci's time, where apprentices copied masters meticulously.
Right, craftsmanship was key.
With later ideas, like from Rousseau or Sec, that really push for pure self-expression, like don't copy, just create.
But the book argues, based on cognitive psychology, that studying examples can actually be more effective, especially when you're starting out.
Yeah, surprisingly more effective than just jumping straight into trying to solve problems on your own. John Sweller's experiments are mentioned here.
Oh, right, where students could solve problems but didn't actually understand the underlying rule.
Exactly. It shows that just doing the problem-solving steps doesn't automatically mean you're learning deeply.
And this is where cognitive load comes in, right?
Looking at worked examples, seeing how it's done, can reduce the mental strain for novices. Frees up brain power to actually understand why it works.
But then there's a twist. The expertise reversal effect.
Yes. As you get better, as you internalize those patterns, studying examples becomes less helpful. You actually benefit more from just practicing, from doing it yourself.
Makes sense. You can't just look at paintings forever. Eventually, you got to paint.
Precisely. And the chapter gives some practical tips, too, like reorganizing confusing instructions to avoid the split attention effect.
For your brain's trying to juggle too many pieces of info at once.
Yeah. And also using pre-training, mastering the basic components first, like learning scales before playing a complex piece.
Okay, so chapter 3 then shifts focus to success is the best teacher.
And this is all about motivation. How those early wins are crucial. The book uses Helen Keller's breakthrough with language.
The water moment. Such a powerful story. That initial success just opened everything up for her.
It really did. And it connects to the Matthew effect in reading.
The idea that kids who read well early on tend to read more, learn more vocabulary, gain more knowledge, and it just snowballs.
Exactly. While those who struggle fall further behind. It highlights the importance of getting those fundamentals right early on.
Like phonological awareness, understanding the sounds within words. The book really champions systematic phonics for teaching reading.
Yeah, explicitly teaching those letter-sound connections, rather than relying on guessing from context, which research shows is, well, less effective.
And it mentions the 2 sigma problem. What's that about?
That's research showing the huge impact of one-on-one tutoring. Like students tutored individually perform, on average, 2 standard deviations better than classroom-taught students. It's a massive difference.
Wow. So how do you bring that kind of benefit to a classroom?
Well, one approach discussed is mastery learning. The idea is to ensure everyone truly masters a concept before the class moves on, rather than just grading on a curve where some are expected to fail.
So it's about setting a standard of mastery and giving students the time and support needed to reach it.
Pretty much. It assumes most people can master the material, given the right conditions.
And this all ties into self-efficacy, doesn't it? Your belief in your own ability.
Absolutely. Albert Bandura's work is referenced. Those early successes, those performance accomplishments, are the biggest drivers of self-belief.
So the big takeaway is start with the basics, nail the prerequisites. You can't build on a shaky foundation.
You really can't. Which leads us to the last chapter in part 1, chapter 4. Knowledge becomes invisible with experience.
Ah, the curse of knowledge. I think we've all experienced this, trying to explain something simple that just seems obvious to us.
Right. Experts become so fluent they forget the individual steps a beginner needs. Rosalind Franklin's intuitive grasp of DNA structures is used as an example here.
She just saw it in the X-ray images, apparently. And the book brings up those classic chess studies by Adrian de Groot.
Yeah, showing that grandmasters don't necessarily calculate more moves ahead than merely good players.
But they recognize patterns much better.
Vastly better. They see the board in meaningful chunks, built up over thousands of hours of experience.
So it's not just rote memory, it's something more adaptable.
Exactly. The book calls it adaptive expertise, the ability to apply knowledge flexibly in new situations. It also mentions the importance of lore.
Lore, like the informal knowledge in a field.
The stuff that's not always in the textbooks, the tricks of the trade, the common pitfalls. Even in science, like with the DNA structure discovery, the official knowledge was initially kind of wrong.
So how do you tap into that expert knowledge if it's invisible?
The book suggests using cognitive task analysis. And practically, it advises asking experts for stories, not just advice.
Stories reveal the context, the thinking process.
Exactly, the tacit stuff. And also talking through tough problems together. Maybe using a structured method like PRI, which helps articulate the steps.
Interesting. And then there's the writer's paradox.
Right. Why do expert writers often seem to struggle and revise so much, while little kids can just churn out stories effortlessly using what's called knowledge telling?
Because the experts are tackling much harder problems.
Precisely. They're not just dumping information, they're shaping it, wrestling with structure, style, audience, complex, self-defined problems. Octavia Butler is mentioned as someone who constantly upped the ante on her writing challenges.
Always pushing her own boundaries to keep growing. Okay, that makes sense. Right, let's move into part 2 then. Learning from practice.
All right. Chapter 5 kicks off with the difficulty sweet spot.
Finding that Goldilocks zone, not too easy, not too hard.
Exactly. Too easy, you're bored, not learning. Too hard, you're frustrated, overwhelmed, and likely to give up. You need that optimal level of challenge.
And the book talks about productive failure here.
Yeah, this is fascinating. It's the idea that trying to solve a problem before you're shown how, even if you fail, can actually lead to deeper learning later.
Why is that? Because you've grappled with it, you understand the difficulties.
Kind of. You activate relevant prior knowledge.
Yeah.
You see the gaps in your understanding. So when you do get the explanation, it clicks better. You're primed for it.
And similar to that is the idea of invention, right? Getting students to generate their own methods first.
It helps them appreciate the elegance or efficiency of the standard method when they see it. Plus, the workshop method in creative fields is mentioned.
Getting feedback, seeing how your work lands with others, crucial for spotting communication gaps.
Definitely. And the chapter also covers scaffolding.
Providing temporary support, like training wheels.
Yeah, breaking down complex tasks, offering hints, gradually removing support as the learner gets better. The key takeaway for practice is this loop. See examples, try problems, get feedback.
Okay, so Chapter 6 challenges a common idea with the title. The mind is not a muscle.
Right. It tackles that old belief in formal discipline, the idea that learning Latin or chess will somehow make you generally smarter or improve your memory across the board.
The mental workout idea.
Exactly. But the book looks at meta-analyses, rigorous studies on things like chess and music training.
And finds minimal transfer to unrelated skills.
Pretty much null effects, actually, when the studies are well controlled. Learning chess makes you better at chess, primarily.
So it relies on Thorndike's theory of identical elements.
Yes, transfer happens when the elements of the skills overlap. The more overlap between what you practice and what you want to do, the more transfer you'll get.
So practicing French vocabulary helps with reading French, but probably not with calculus?
Not directly, no. Now, the book doesn't say no generalization happens. With enough varied examples, you can abstract principles, but the main message is clear.
Focus your practice on the specific thing you want to improve.
Precisely. Don't expect unrelated practice to magically make you better at your target skill.
Got it. Okay, Chapter 7. Variability over repetition.
This contrasts blocked practice, doing the same thing over and over with varied practice,
Right.
mixing things up. Think jazz improvisation versus drilling one scale endlessly.
And variability is generally better for learning.
For long-term retention and transfer, yes. This is linked to the contextual interference effect.
Okay, what's that?
It's the finding that mixing up different skills or variations during practice, even though it feels harder and might slow down initial performance, leads to more robust, flexible learning in the long run.
So instead of doing 50 serves, then 50 volleys in tennis, you'd mix serves and volleys randomly.
Kinda, yeah. Or in math, instead of doing all addition problems, then all subtraction, you'd interleave them. Same for language learning, art styles. The book gives lots of examples.
And it mentions multiple representations, too.
Seeing the same concept in different ways deepens understanding. Like the example of turning number Scrabble into tic-tac-toe, it reveals the underlying structure.
But variability isn't always the answer, right? There are limits.
True. It depends on skill overlap and your experience level. Beginners often need some block practice first, just to get the basic movements or concepts down.
Build a foundation before you start mixing it up too much.
Exactly. You need that baseline competence first.
Okay, Chapter 8. Quality comes from quantity. This pushes back against the lone genius idea, doesn't it?
It really does. It suggests that creative breakthroughs often come from sheer volume of output. Thomas Edison and his 1,000+ patents is the classic example.
So it's not just waiting for one perfect idea.
Not usually. Herbert Simon's view is mention creativity as thinking writ large, using the same basic problem-solving tools as everyday thinking, just applied to harder problems.
And the equal odds baseline theory.
That basically suggests that the more ideas you generate, the quantity, the higher your chances of hitting on a really good one, the quality. It's partly a numbers game.
Like blind variation and selective retention in evolution. Try lots of things, keep what works.
That's the analogy, yeah. Lots of little bets increase the chance of a big payoff. So strategies like dedicated deep work time are suggested to just produce more.
Makes sense. Okay, that brings us to the final part, Part 3. Feedback. Learning from experience.
Right. And Chapter 9 starts with a crucial point. Experience doesn't reliably ensure expertise.
Just doing something for a long time doesn't guarantee you get better.
Not necessarily. The book uses Annette Obersad, the online poker prodigy, as an example. She got incredibly good, incredibly fast, because online poker gave her tons of accelerated experience and immediate feedback.
The feedback is key.
Crucial, especially in uncertain environments. Paul Meehl's research is highlighted, showing how often statistical algorithms outperform expert human judgment in parole decisions, medical diagnoses.
Because human intuition can be flawed, especially when feedback is slow or unclear.
Exactly. Our biases creep in, we misremember outcomes. But the book isn't entirely pessimistic about judgment. Philip Tetlock's work on superforecasters is mentioned.
People who can get really good at predicting uncertain events.
Yes, by using specific strategies, tracking their predictions and outcomes, calibrating their confidence, seeking diverse viewpoints, keeping score, basically creating their own feedback system.
So you have to be deliberate about learning from experience in messy situations.
You really do. Which leads to Chapter 10, making feedback work.
Because not all feedback is helpful.
Far from it. Effective feedback isn't just right or wrong. It needs to help you understand why you made a mistake. And in complex situations, there might not even be a single right answer.
And the social side matters too, right? Harsh feedback can shut people down.
Absolutely. Even overly effusive praise like "you're so smart" can backfire by creating a fear of failure. A good feedback environment is focused on learning, correction, built on trust, not judgment.
And getting it from different people helps. Peers, mentors.
Definitely. Diverse perspectives catch different things.
Okay. Chapter 11. Unlearning your assumptions. Sometimes you have to go backward to go forward.
Sort of, yeah. Getting better might mean dismantling old habits or faulty mental models. As skills become automatic, through those stages of acquisition.
Cognitive, associative, autonomous.
Right. That autonomous stage, while efficient, can make it hard to change or improve. You're on autopilot.
And the book mentions non-monotonicity, performance dipping when you try a new, better way.
Exactly. It can feel awkward and slow at first when you're consciously trying a new technique, even if it's ultimately superior. So you need strategies to push through that dip.
Like what?
Getting direct feedback on the specific old habit you want to change.
Yeah.
Using pre-commitment to force yourself to use the new method, or applying constraints that make the old way impossible or awkward.
Making it harder to fall back into old patterns. Okay. And the final chapter, chapter 12.
Yeah.
Fears fade with exposure.
This tackles a huge barrier to learning. Anxiety and fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown.
And the way to deal with it is based on psychological principles.
Extinction and habituation. Basically, fears lessen when you gradually and repeatedly confront the feared situation without the bad thing happening.
So avoiding your fears actually makes them stronger.
Often, yes. It reinforces the idea that the situation is dangerous or unbearable. The key is gradual, controlled exposure.
Like exposure therapy for phobias.
Exactly that principle. Yeah. The goal isn't to eliminate risk entirely, but to test your fearful predictions and learn that you can cope, to build confidence through experience.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping it all up, Get Better at Anything, really gives you this comprehensive framework.
It does. It covers seeing how others do it, the nuances of effective practice, and how to actually learn from feedback and overcome internal barriers like fear. It challenges common myths about learning.
Absolutely. It feels very practical, very evidence-based. So for you, the listener, the real value here is thinking about your own goals. Where do you want to get better? And how can you apply these ideas? Learning from examples, finding that difficulty sweet spot, seeking better feedback, maybe even confronting some anxieties around it.
It really provides a set of tools, a mindset for that journey of continuous improvement, which is what learning really is.
It definitely does. A fantastic read, full of actionable stuff.
Agreed.
And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive into Scott H. Young's work, make sure you follow Bookish Dives. We'll be back soon with more in-depth explorations of insightful books.